Hello, Lynn. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm just going to give everybody a little intro about you, and then we'll ask you some questions. Lynn is an amazing watercolor artist. She loves to paint things in large scale. As you can see behind her, that football is an amazing painting. And we share that in common. I like to zoom in, zoom out, do series. Not only is she an amazing watercolor artist, she's a teacher as well. And I am very inspired by how you're teaching platform and how you're doing all that. So I just wanted to come on and ask a few questions this morning and get to know you a little bit better. So my first question was, what made you fall in love with watercolor?
Well, originally I was an architect, and I decided that, architect has to be so perfect and, everything has to be exact, obviously, to have a building stand up. So I saw some watercolor paintings and I thought, I should do watercolor. My kids had just gotten a little bit older, so I had a tiny bit of free time. And I thought, I'll try something that's just loose and I can let it flow and relax and do it. So I got some paints and I started it and realized that that is not my style at all. That I'm an architect for a reason. And so I started painting in like a super perfectionist way, just like I did my architecture. And I just totally fell in love with it. It was perfect for me. It fit my personality, painting that way perfectly. And I just started painting in any moment of free time I had. I would sit down at nights after I had put the kids to bed, anytime I wasn't working. And I had my own architectural firm at that point. So I slowly let go of clients and stopped taking new ones and was painting more and more, and kind of just started painting and ended up closing down my firm and painting full time.
That's awesome. And we share that too. I think people tell me all the time, you're going to loosen up the longer you paint. I'm like, I don't think so.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think this is me.
Yeah, I agree. So what advice do you have? You've got a lot of new students. I'm sure you have all different, stages of people in their watercolor career, but I know you have quite a few tutorials and classes on Patreon. So tell us a little bit about those and what advice you have for students that are in watercolor classes.
Yeah, so I started school through Patreon, and it's great. I love it. In the beginning, I was just thinking I was doing one-on-one classes at first. So I had like one student at a time, and we're doing it live through FaceTime or Zoom, because at that point, COVID hadn't happened yet, and I was still traveling and doing classes, but I had lots of people who said, I can't afford to get to a class, I can't travel to get to a class. Do you offer anything online? So I decided to start doing classes. So I started with one-on-one, and I loved it. I loved working with students that way. And I thought, this would be great if I just recorded one of these and made it available. So I started doing it that way, and then just opened up the online school. And I can tell you, it's been wonderful. I post a new tutorial every single week. And my students are wonderful. I can say, like, they inspire me to keep painting at this point. I think I'm getting more out of it than they are. We have a group where everybody can post their finished work and everybody comments on it. And everybody's so supportive of each other. It's just been such a great experience. And for new beginners, my suggestion is to find some tutorials. My school, I have a lot of free ones, and I have a lot of ones that are like a monthly fee. It's only $14 a month, and you get 4 tutorials. But even if you're not looking to pay for something, there's a bunch of free ones on there. So if you are new to watercolor, my number one suggestion is get good materials. Don't go to the art store and get student grade paper and student grade materials. You will never be happy with them. Brushes, you can kind of go either way, but paper and paint, you really want good stuff. And watch some tutorials when you're starting, or you're just going to get frustrated. Find either someone's style that you like and see if they offer classes or tutorials, or just search up on YouTube some free beginner watercolor tips when you start, because I know lots of people get frustrated in the beginning and then don't keep going with it because it works so differently than other mediums. So my main suggestion is to really just look into some more of the details, find someone you like, take some of their classes to start out.
That's awesome. Yeah, I totally agree with you about the materials. That's the one place you cannot skimp on.
Yep. Don't skimp on paper. That's the number one.
Yes.
Then get good paint. you can always mix 2 colors. You don't need 30 colors to start. You know, you need 5 colors and you're good to go.
Right.
So get good ones.
And so you have done this amazing thing where you started your own watercolor competition, Women in Watercolor. So I would love it if you'd explain a little bit about that. And I know you've got a deadline coming up for the second annual one. So let us know about that.
Yeah. So I had started this school and I had so many students. I have a bunch of men too, but the majority of them are from women that are students with me. And so many of them were so nervous to enter a competition. There are so many things to think about when you're entering something. Not only is your painting good enough and being nervous about that, but also, is it the right size? Where do I have to ship it? How do I ship it? How do I frame it? There was all these questions that they had that they were not entering even when their work was amazing. So I came up with Women in Watercolor to kind of encourage them to not be afraid. It was an online only competition, which of course, when I started was pre-COVID and there wasn't many of them at that point. So I thought, you know, I'll try this and see how it goes, but it would be a way for them to be able to enter something and, you know, build their confidence. And the whole point of the competition, yes, there's winners, but it's really to help promote the Women in Watercolor, to share their art, to get it out there, to really just help them, show them that, you know, you can do this and it doesn't have to be difficult. So our first competition, we had over 1,200 entries. It was amazing, from over 50 different countries. And we had wonderful judges last year. And this year I am super excited. I've just started announcing a few of them, but our panel of judges is fantastic this year. So I'm super excited about that. So entry opens April 1st and it runs through June 8th of 2021. So everyone should start getting their paintings ready now. The full prospectus will be posted shortly, but basically, as long as it's watercolor and it's on paper, there's no size requirements, there's no time requirements. As long as it wasn't entered into last year's competition, it can be entered into this year's. So it just makes it really as simple as possible for people who are painting at home, even if they're just doing it as a hobby, to kind of get a chance and put it out there and see their work online. So that was the whole thought behind it.
That's fantastic. And it's very cool that you're doing that. So, you may have already pivoted beforehand, but have you pivoted during COVID? Has anything changed much for you, or were you already on that trajectory?
Well, I was still doing a bunch of in-person classes at the beginning of everything, but I was lucky. I had started my online school, like, I don't know, about 6 months maybe before. So I had all of that stuff going before COVID. So that made it a little bit easier. My family is high risk. So when everything started, we went into complete quarantine and didn't go anywhere. I mean, not for months, we didn't go anywhere. So I went completely online. So I was lucky that I already had it kind of set up. But having the kids home full time while trying to record videos that I'm going to publish live, you know, to other people. I still do lots of one-on-one classes as well. So having 2 teenagers in the house while trying to manage them, get them to do schoolwork, I have found just running internet with everybody on the computer at once is difficult. So there's those kinds of things that I'm sure everyone is dealing with. I did find it in the beginning, I do large scale work. And because the kids were home, I found that I never had huge chunks of time where normally I would have the whole time they were at school. I had much smaller periods of time. So I actually started working slightly smaller. I did another big one. I'm working on the football one, but it's taking me much longer to get these big works done because I don't have that focused time because the kids are here. So I've decided, instead of stressing about it, I'm just going to do some smaller works while all this is going on and then go back to my big stuff once I have those dedicated chunks of time.
And I just watched the National Watercolor Society just had a little panel on virtual teaching, and they were saying, and I've always been doing it anyway, but smaller paintings work better for virtual teaching because you can get the whole thing in the screen. So that is something that may have been a side benefit to not having.
Yes, and especially with realistic painting, it takes so long to do a painting that if I'm doing a huge painting, I can't do one in a 2-hour class. You know, so working smaller, most of my tutorials are all 8x10 or 11x14, depending on what the subject matter is. I have done a couple larger paintings through the Patreon just to show students how you do that, how you get your image big, how you know, work on that large size paper, but most of the weekly tutorials are smaller. So that worked out good. I had to do one a week anyway for my classes, you know, so I just kept the small stuff going, and I've been having fun trying to be creative and come up with new subjects that I can photograph in my house.
I understand. All right, so we'll finish up with my last question for you. And then after that, I failed to tell you this ahead of time, but if you can tell us your website and where people can find you on Instagram and your website after that. But what goals do you have for yourself this coming up year? I hesitate to ask because who knew what 2020 would look like. But do you have goals this year that you already have set up?
Yeah, you know, I'm really focusing most of my time on my online school and this watercolor competition, the Women in Watercolor. So if you're interested in the Women in Watercolor, you can go, it's www.womeninwatercolor.com. And there's a mailing list. So if anybody's interested, you just go on, you can sign up for the mailing list, and I'll send any updates when the entry starts, all that kind of stuff, when the prospectus comes out. So I'm just working on all that kind of stuff, really hoping that in the next year that competition becomes big. My plan with it is that there also will be in-person events. So, you know, as part of that we would have gatherings and teachings where, you know, like top artists would come and we would do in-person classes, but we'll have to push that off. Hopefully, maybe we'll get to that next year. So, you know, I'm really excited. I hope that by next year we can get back to in-person stuff. And things like that. But in the meantime, I'll just keep working on my online school and the Women in Watercolor and keeping my family sane.
I understand. And where can people find you on Instagram and your website so that we...
Yep. So my website is www.lynndpratt.com. And then my Instagram is Lynn D Pratt Paint. And so is my Facebook. So if you search Lynn D Pratt on any of the social medias, you can find me. And I do lots of tutorials on there and small in progress. So you can follow along each day with what I'm working on. So on Instagram and Facebook, daily, I post my updates and progress on everything that I'm working on and do little tips and things like that on there as well. So I hope you'll check me out.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and answering some questions today. And I appreciate you taking time out of your hectic morning. So
yeah, no problem.
You have a good day. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much. Bye.